sloppy spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here. And we're here to review the penultimate episode of Ahsoka, as well as the finale. And I have to tell you before I bring my co-host on that I am done. I'm just done with Disney Star Wars. I'm done. If you remember, before we watched this show, we reviewed the trailer and we all talked about whether or not we were going to give this a chance because we didn't want to be bait and switch. We didn't want to experience what we'd experienced with all the other Star Wars shows. And sure enough, here we are again, but I'm done. Steve's famous line is, whoever don't learn nothing, Harley don't learn nothing, Sabine don't learn nothing. My line for these last two episodes is going to be, nothing makes any sense. I literally got tired preparing for this review because I was like, this is the most nonsensical thing I think I've seen in a while. And I heard somebody say on a video this week that it's just fanfic. That is an insult to fanfic. This is not even up to snuff because some fanfic out there is really, really good. That's not even what this is. What this is we're going to throw a bunch of scenes together. We're going to make a bunch of things happen because we want to see them and forget any type of storytelling structure or connectivity. So I'm done. I can't make you understand how done I am. So anyway, let me bring my co-host on so we can all be done together. Welcome to Dave Nemesis Howard.
Well, let me sum this up musically for everybody. This is my sum up review of Disney Star Wars and Ahsoka, which is the giant cherry on this Rotten Sunday, which is, oh, you're no good, you're no good, you're no good, baby, you're no good. Yeah. I've reached a point where even people whose stuff I had a lot of time for, like Dave Filoni, I don't know what happened. I don't know what to say. And I feel bad because I went into this with the highest of hopes and convincing people that, yes, Rebels was great. Clone Wars is great. You got to watch it. And if you could do Rebels and Clone Wars, then this show is going to be good. And I was wrong. Mea culpa. There it is. Review over.
Well, you're dealing with people that don't understand basic things. And if you don't understand basic things like uniting a fan base, goodwill, like the fact that geek support is generational support. Because just like our four parents got us into it, my father is the one who bought me my first comic book. We teach our children. So you're actually dissing generations, not just one level. Don't understand that. Because how many times in life do you think life is going to drop a beloved franchise that's been strong for over 45 years in your hands? And their response is to divide it. Anyway.
I just don't understand how somebody who could have done things that I will still say are very good, which is Rebels and Clone Wars, and then put out this schlock. So there it is.
Well, you need to find another song. It's called True Colors. I see your true colors shining through.
Nice. I see you there. I see you. So
welcome to Steve Shadewing Sellers, Dr. Steve.
You have failed us for the last time, Dave Filoni. What really kills me about all of this is that this could have been a great show if they hadn't girl bossed too close to the sun. If they hadn't made such really stupid, basic mistakes. If they had Grand Admiral Thrawn actually act like a great general, which he is supposed to be, instead of like the diet Thrawn, and I will say, DT and I kind of had the same reaction to Thrawn in this episode to the point that we used the same term for him, which ought to tell you something. We did not talk to each other about it. We separately came up with this, and that is exactly what he is. And in addition, I will say, if I am coming up with better plans than Grand Admiral Thrawn, you're not doing it right. It's just, I mean, I am just, and Sabine, she's turned into Harley Quinn. She doesn't learn anything. She gets away with everything. She gets, no consequences whatsoever for the horrible decisions that she made. Oh yeah, I forgive you. It was okay. You meant well. No, she did this because all her thought was on getting Ezra back. And then once she was reunited with Ezra, what does she do? Does she come forward and say, "Oh, I made a dumb decision, but I did it because I wanted to try to save you"? Was she straightforward with him or with anyone? No, she still, all she did was she deceived him. She didn't want to tell him what she had really done or why. She didn't even bring it up to Ahsoka. And I'm just sort of like, I love these characters in Rebels. Absolutely loved Sabine and Ahsoka in Clone Wars. And I will say the best character out of Rebels that was in this whole episode, or the last two, was Ezra. I mean, the character that they're least focusing on was the best of them.
So this is what happens when you have nothing.
This episode was a mess, and these last two episodes were a mess, really. And what really kills me is that they had some great ideas. They had some really interesting moments that could have been used for great characterization, great storytelling. You had the best villain you could have possibly have had. Against Ahsoka Tano, and that would have been a really, really great, story if done right. But you know what? They messed it up, and I don't know how Dave Filoni could have fallen this far off the shark. How he could have jumped it. He force leaped over the shark. That is how bad this is. I am so disappointed with him, and I am because he is capable of way, way better, as we have seen with Clone Wars, Rebels, in the first two seasons of Mando. And force jumped over the shark.
Did he force jump over the shark and then Sabine held him up so he can get all the way over?
Yeah, with her non-existent force powers.
Oh, Lord have mercy. It's so bad. Even the dog is like, this was trash.
Bean does not like it at all.
Let's bring on Jeff. I bet he's not happy now. Bracy.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let me go in like hard. This is yeah. All right. First of all, Dave Filoni, screw you. Disney, screw you. Screw all you guys. I'm not setting my eyes on another piece of Star Wars content unless we're going to do some god-awful review, which I will torture my soul for. If you want to see some good Star Wars, get on some YouTube, watch some fan films by people who've got will and desire and passion and love for this, because fuck you guys. I'm like a fist all the way up to my friggin' elbow. Screw you guys. This was so dumb. This was so disrespectful. The level of stupid in these two episodes is mind-boggling. And I thought the sequel trilogies got pretty doggone dumb. But no. And Dave Filoni, you are a yellow-spined little sellout. Favreau got fired off everything because he had the balls to stand up. But you just keep sucking on KK's tit there. You just like dangle from that teat, because that's where you're at. I'll slap that cowboy hat off your head. You don't deserve that, because that's something cool that a man wears. You ain't a man. You might look like a man, but you ain't a man, as Mrs. Swan used to say. Ah, man, I want to go into a WWE promo on this cat. And Disney, I'm so fed up with this.
Let the hate flow through you.
Oh, I'm feeling it. I'm like, Palpatine, let's get on with this. I'm good. You know what? I'm going to create a whole new galaxy. You want to see some good Star Wars? Rebel Moon. That's going to be my new Star Wars.
Gives you focus. Makes you stronger. So let the hate flow. So,
Cowboy Dave.
Oh, don't even put that.
Take off the hat, dude.
Take off the hat. We can't look at that now.
I'm going to punch my computer if you keep that face.
So, I don't need to be messing up my laptop with that face. No. So we're gonna try to get ourselves through this. We're all coming in hot.
I had no idea I was gonna get this incensed watching this bullshit.
Jeff coming in blazing hot, guns blazing.
I am a life-destroying meteor coming to a planet. I am an extinction event when it comes to Star Wars right now.
He said all the way up to his elbow. Do you know that's how far you have to stick your arm in to pull a calf out of a cow? You know that, right? So like this is.
There's nothing but afterbirth coming out of here.
This is this is so rotten. Okay, so we're gonna try to get through this. Now, I've got to do some macrovision stuff, and then we can do some microvision details. And I've got to do some real world stuff, and then we will do some in-story details. Like I was talking to Nims, how many times in life do you think life is going to drop on you the most successful sci-fi/fantasy franchise of all time, 45 plus years of goodwill of stories, and business 101 is know your audience. Know your audience. When you're dealing with a geek / sci-fi or fantasy audience member, we were most likely taught these things from our parents, but we definitely teach them to our children. So when you diss a generation of geeks, it's not just them that you're losing. You're losing all the kids or grandkids, the subsequent generations that we would love to share the things we love passionately. If you can't tell that we are passionate lovers of these content, so that's 2 or 3 generations worth of income and support that you're dissing when you lose that. So how many times in life do you think you're going to get a franchise with that type of global reach, with that type of generational reach, with that type of across barriers and boundaries, no demographic limitations to have people love? How many times in life do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, PT, to that point, consider the long gap in between Star Wars and the prequels. And consider the long gap in between the prequels to the sequels to the Disney purchase, and what kept the franchise alive. Fans buying content that wasn't even being produced by George Lucas, the books, the comics, the video games, and all of that's gone. You'll have these weirdo simping little fans who are all like rah girl boss and whatever who's going on. That's all you've got left, and you're going to find out that's a pretty tiny friggin' demographic. So
that's right. That's
well
right.
Done.
That leads me to my next macrovision point, in that you turned a global franchise into a niche franchise.
Yes.
I still can't believe it. You turned it into a franchise that only caters to people that believe in the girl boss ideal, and that every male must be humiliated, and that every male that was the selling point and the main character in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy has to be minimized, replaced, humiliated, incompetent, and can't show any type of skill or acumen to make room for the girl bosses to do so. So when you do that, then you shrink your audience naturally to the very small amount of people, and you cannot then expect $1 billion box office if you're going to turn something grand into a niche franchise. Now, when Heir to the Empire comes out, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope
Don't care.
Not a good story, but you can't continue to dish your core fan base, because once again, you do not understand business 101 when you do stuff like that. You can't diss the people that have spent years buying your product. That's what Bud Light found out.
I will just say this. I was in line with my parents at the Central City Mall in San Bernardino, California on the day that Star Wars was released. We waited for 2.5 hours. I was going nuts. We went and we saw the movie. Right after we got done with the movie, we drove to Toys R Us, which was 2.5 miles down the road, and I got my first action figures. And that was the start of my Star Wars fandom, and it never quit. I never bothered seeing the last Jedi or whatever the hell that last, sequel movie was. I didn't see it, and I won't see Heir to the Empire. So, and I gave Star Wars on Disney Plus a chance because I have Disney Plus whether I want it or not, and I watch it. But now I'm not even watching that stuff. There's stuff coming out from the MCU now that I used to tune in every time anything new that was comic book related dropped. I watched it. I haven't seen any of that stuff. So, the powers that be may say, "Oh, you're this or that," or so long, goodbye. But it's like, I was your fan base for 40 something years, and still would be, and you've completely lost me. So
now, Nims, that could not be a more perfect transition into where I was going next. That could not possibly be any more perfect. And here it is. On a macrovision level, Star Wars and Jaws were the movies that invented the summer blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were alive back then, or if you've studied movie history, you know that they're the ones that demonstrated how long a movie could do well in theaters and how many times people would buy a repeat ticket because there were no DVD sales. There was no internet. So if you want to see it again, you have to go back to the movies. And everything Nemesis said about the goodwill, about the excitement, about being hooked from the beginning and becoming a fan for 40 years. But here's the thing. For those of you that don't know the history, the reason that George Lucas got rich is because he kept the franchise rights, particularly the merch and toy rights.
Yeah.
Because back then, no studios believed that you could sell toys related to movies on that level. And so they let him keep the rights. And that's actually how he got rich, because he established the merch and particularly the toy connection to some of blockbusters. And Star Wars merchandise, Star Wars toys have been evergreen in terms of sales items. Every year and every season, they sell well until now.
Yeah.
Because
and I will add that George Lucas was very skeptical of corporations and the way that they handle these franchises. You know, he fought to keep away from the studio system for years. So he knew. And then, you know, I think he was very much on the record as having regretted, selling it to Disney, because it's like selling it to wives slavers was the term he used. And he was proven right over and over again. Disney has absolutely run this series into the ground. And not only that, they think that their audience is not the actual audience they have. And instead of catering to the audience they have, they want to try to go Disney princess like their other brands. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not Star Wars now. It's Horror Wars, because they're just prostituting it right out there.
Is it Horror Wars? Yeah.
Horror Wars.
And for anybody out here who wants to hate on all of us or hate on me specifically for what I just said, when Force Awakens came out, before I had seen the movie, and even after the movie, I was still interested. When I saw the trailers and saw Rey and everything, and thought that she was going to be a female Jedi or something like that, I thought that was cool, because I was thinking Mara Jade.
It was
and exciting. Like that. I went to GameStop and asked for a Rey action figure, which they weren't making at that point. They didn't release a Rey action figure for the movie. I wanted a Rey action figure.
They're not making Ahsoka action figures for this show. They said that they wouldn't sell. So it's the same thing. History is repeating itself.
I want everyone to understand that.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be people out there going to say, oh, you're a misogynist. Oh, you don't like it. No. I was already, I wanted to buy a Rey action figure. They weren't available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, this show has made me hate characters I love. I could give two shits about Ahsoka right now, or Sabine Wren, or Hera, or any of these, like, who I loved in flipping Rebels or Clone Wars. Like, I don't care anymore. Star Wars used to be an event. It used to be an event. And Kathleen Kennedy had the balls to get out and say a little while back, is like, oh, we need to make Star Wars an event again. Like, bitch, you're the one who screwed all that up.
They made me. Was it episode 7? I don't even remember. I can't keep track. It all blends together, the crap. But whenever 3PO came in and did his little talk to the hand, they made me hate 3PO. How is that freaking possible?
Yeah. I have to disassociate the Disney Star Wars versions of these characters from anything other versions that we've seen them in before. I cannot look at Rebels and see Sabine as the same character as Ahsoka, because they went that far afield. Same with Han, same with Ahsoka, same with everything else. It's ridiculous.
Book of Boba Fett ain't Boba Fett.
Nope.
They've destroyed. What I want people to understand is that they've destroyed the major income stream that they created. They created toy merch sales being tied into movies on that level. And now they can't give the stuff away. Yeah. They literally can't give the stuff away. And all of the action figures from The Force Awakens and on are just sitting on the shelves. And if they don't use original characters, classic characters, Lucas characters, There's no way. So how are you going to shoot yourself in the foot?
The only thing you can still sell is Rose Tico because Ethan Van Sciver will buy that for the lulz.
That's right. So I want people to understand the big picture thinking at the sinking ship that we've been witnessing over these decades. And so that's the macro vision type of stuff. Now we're going to get into more micro vision stuff where we're going to talk about actual storytelling and the events in the episodes. Because the first thing that I have to admit and acknowledge is that I can't remember half the stuff that happened in Ahsoka. It's not because I'm tired. It's because there weren't any memorable events. You can quote 80% of the lines from Empire Strikes Back from memory. You can quote Empire. You can quote the best lines in A New Hope. But here, I'm like, is there anything quotable? So when we look at the Ahsoka series from a bookend point of view, from episode 1 to episode 8, do you know what happened of significance? What happened was everybody that was in the core worlds, Ahsoka and Sabine and whoever else, and Huyan, went to find Thrawn and Ezra, and then everybody just switched places. So now Ahsoka and Sabine are out there somewhere 13 trillion light years away in some galaxy that there's no map for. And Thrawn and Ezra, because we know Ezra made it back, we'll get to that in a minute, are back to where Ahsoka was. And that's pretty much all that happened in 8 episodes. So from a storyteller point of view, because I was racking my brain to try to think of memorable moments, and everything I could remember just made me angry because it was so dumb. And when you do stuff like that, you throw those moments out of your mind. So we're going to look at the overall arc of what happens. It doesn't make any sense. And you know why it doesn't make any sense? And now we're going to get into specific scenes. Here's why. I tried to look and see if I could find a scene with Ahsoka's plan. And I realized that she said, I have no idea if these space whales are going to take us where we're supposed to go. She's like, I don't know. And I said to myself, you're going to juxtapose her being personally trained by Anakin Skywalker, showing him become Darth Vader without the bionics and without the dismembering and the burning, have her have access to him, have her have the reputation before Thrawn of being trained by Anakin, and her sleepy Xanax, I must be high on shrooms response is, hey, we don't know. I guess it's all going to work out. Why would anybody follow you into battle? And I realized they effectively destroyed Ahsoka's character because it was so nonsensical. And then to top all that off, I was like, what was your plan if you found him? Because now he, even with the dilapidated Star Destroyer, is on his way back to the core systems to do whatever Thrawn's going to do, which is fun to watch. It's not that wouldn't be anticipated because he's such a great villain, but we'll get to the diet Thrawn aspect of that in a minute. But I was like,
he's not even diet Thrawn. He's empty calories Thrawn.
Jeff said he's on NutraSweet. So what was your plan to stop him? So if you find him, not Ezra to Sabine, not that whole plot line, which we'll get to, but I'm talking about Ahsoka Tano and Thrawn. What was your plan to stop him? If you were you going to kill him? Because you can't encounter somebody like Thrawn and not take him out. So you have to have a plan to take him out. So what was your plan to stop him? Because all you did was guarantee he could get back to where you were from with his full complement of stormtroopers or whatever it was that he needed. But what was your plan to stop him? And I was trying to find a scene where she articulated, where she said something deep like, this is going to be a suicide mission. If we're going to stop Thrawn, we have to be willing to give our lives. Or, the space whales, when I mind melded with them, they told me some secrets. Or something, anything that let me know you had thought out how once you found this, quantum level villain,
or
what you were going to do to ensure that you quelled his threat to the galaxy.
How about we all get together, stow aboard the Eye of Sion, and blow that up so that everybody's stuck here?
Yeah.
So,
That would have been a plan.
I mean, like,
Anything
and
would have been
there's-
a plan. And what gets me is that, this is in stark contrast with Clone Wars, where she spent 6 seasons earning the trust of the clones. And after a while, towards the end, they all followed her without any question. Why? Because she had plans and she carried them out and they were effective. And by the end of she was able to take out Darth Maul, and she did so with a convincing plan. And, that no problem. And what does he do to capitalize on this afterwards? I think we're just going to go in there. We're going to find Thrawn somehow. And it's like, this guy's a tactical genius. Why are you doing this?
If she had been an apprentice of Qui-Gon Jinn, this would have been fine. Because Qui-Gon just lit himself. He was the leaf on the wind. Whatever the Force dictated is what he did.
Jedi fighting. That's right.
That's what he did. That's how Qui-Gon lived. That's why he was never a master on the council, because he didn't get involved in the thing. Like, he was the actual Zen master amongst the Jedi. He went with the flow. But Ahsoka was trained by a tactical wizard. She was trained by the most illustrious general of the Battle of the Clone Wars, Anakin Skywalker, who had plans, and we saw the payoff of that. She learned how to be a tactical leader. But that's not this chick. And no disparaging of Rosario Dawson. She's just working with the material she's been given.
Okay, now that is also a perfect transition as we go into, let's go to specific characters and specific scenes. And we'll start with the title character.
Do we have to?
We have to. Yeah, we have to.
Okay.
Now, I know that a lot of people don't like that there is balance in life. And I don't care, because I didn't invent life. So you just have to be upset and die mad. So just like you can have something go to one extreme, you can have an equal and opposite extreme kind of thing. So I'll explain what I mean. What I mean is that Kevin Conroy is so ingrained in our minds as the voice of Bruce Wayne and Batman until he got to a point where you couldn't separate him from Batman. Chris Reeve gave such a powerful performance as Superman, Bronze Age Superman for sure. But his performance was so powerful until he became, and still is to this day, the gold standard of translating a comic book character from 2 dimensions to 3. He still is. No one's topped him. Some people are in the top 5 now.
Born for the role.
But Reeve is always at the top. And he realized, as he tried to move on with his life, he was Superman to people now. He couldn't get away from that, even after his accident. He's Superman forever, okay? The voice of James Earl Jones, as he relinquished his voice rights to Disney Star Wars so that the voice of Darth Vader would sound like him forever. Because his voice, Darth Vader is a composite character. And his voice is so ingrained in that until we can't hear Vader any other way. I stopped by to tell you that the opposite effect of what I just described can happen. That is what happened with Ahsoka, and I'm stunned that Rosario Dawson's performance, which I like her as an actress, most of the things I've seen her in, I really liked.
Yeah.
So I'm not disparaging her actress. This performance separated real Ahsoka from her. Real Ahsoka was in Clone Wars. Real Ahsoka was in Rebels, and we got a taste of her in Mando. But this performance, this sleepwalking, lightsaber, slow, middle-aged kind of, I'm just seeing about that kind of thing. That's not Ahsoka. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that your performance or this writing, this direction was so bad until now I have 2 versions of Ahsoka in my mind. I have real Ahsoka, because your Ahsoka is bright-eyed. Her eyes are a little bit bigger. She's energetic. She's has a zest for life. She has to be reined in half the time because she's so quick to the draw. And this woman was high, sleepy, and disenchanted. And I'm like, that ain't Ahsoka. I don't know who that is. And and this is the other thing, and I'm going to throw it out to you guys because we're going to start with Ahsoka. How can I put this? Okay. I talked about it in my interview with John Wesley Shipp, and I've talked about it with every piece of content. I've noticed that the veteran actors bring the weight. They bring the gravitas. There's something about a veteran actor, they bring such strength with them to the screen. And when you put a young upstart next to them, you can see the difference. You can see the difference between somebody who's just starting out or somebody who just has a career because they're pretty versus somebody that can actually act. So you know who had to win us over? That would be Hayden Christensen. When he first came out as Anakin turning into Vader, there was a lot of flack. There was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of, they said his delivery was wooden. There was a lot of negative stuff, and it affected him because you saw recently when he was at a convention, people clapped for him so much, he started crying because he has won us over. He has convinced us that he is Anakin Skywalker. He's become the face of the franchise, and now people love him. Now, I'm trying to give you an example of how it can change. Well, Rosario and Ahsoka has had the opposite effect. I'm like, I don't know who you are, but Ahsoka, you are not. Do you know how hard you have to work to turn in such a bad performance that it disconnects you from the source material? And so I'm stunned. I'm stunned at how not Ahsoka that is to me. You have now carved out a niche in your own series where you are a character that don't exist anywhere else. So let me hear your thoughts on that. Starting with Ahsoka. Yes, we have to.
Did you want anybody in particular, or
Jeff, you can start because I see you have many rants fired up
oh,
tonight.
I'm so fired up. I'm trying to dial it in a little bit.
He has rant turbo lasers at the ready.
Yeah, and unlike
They're
Thrawn,
not effective. So.
yeah, unlike Thrawn's goons, I can actually hit something. I'm going to hit the mark here. First of all, let's start calling her a Sloka because that's the slowest thing I've seen in a long time. She manages to get a little bit better towards the end here, but when I compare Christian Haydensen's performance in the prequels to what he's doing now, you can see part of the reason he got so much flack, the wooden performance, is because that was the direction he was being given. George Lucas was trying to have him talk in that stilted sort of Darth Vader way, but without the ominous inflection. But we did also see the wiseacrery, the humor that he had, the passion, all these other things before Darth Vader became this basically a robot. The only time you really see him lose his cool in the original series is that first moment when he's like, "Commander, tear this ship apart," you know. But from that point on, Darth Vader always maintains his, his menacing chill. And so George was trying to do that, but it didn't seem like he was quite able to get that across. And reportedly, Hayden wasn't allowed to do his own thing. Like you said, a veteran actor will bring their own thing, and a good director will take them because they're doing the work of building the character. A movie is a big collaborative effort, and you've got to allow the actors to explore and express, even if you're the author of this. So what kills me is thinking that Dave Filoni, who wrote this character from start to finish now, so dropped the ball on this. The character is so 180 degrees from what she was, and I can't take the life experience that she's supposed to have had within the series, all the various series, to see her get to this point. So I can only think that Dave is just taking whatever's dropped down from on high and trying to figure out how to work it in. He's totally given up. He is a total sellout. I will stand by that. He's got no stake in it. He's got no fight anymore. He's already seen Favreau get the boot off of every Disney project, not just Star Wars, every Disney project he was going to be involved with. He's gone. Filoni wants to stay where he is, much to his shame. He is not the continuation of George Lucas. And, looking at some things that made me a little squidgy about some of the things he'd done earlier in the days, didn't want to believe it. But I've got to accept the facts that he was never going to be the heir to Lucas. And he's proven it because this is not Ahsoka Tano.
No, it's not. Who was the actress that played a young Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds flashback to the
Ariana Greenblatt, and she was very good. She was much more. She was much more.
She nailed it.
Ahsoka. Yeah,
she nailed it. That was Ahsoka. And so, anyway, Nims, thoughts.
I'm going to go somewhere that a lot of people haven't gone, and I think there's, all of the criticism against the direction and the writing and everything is absolutely warranted. But I'm going to put some of this on Rosario Dawson, and she's someone that I have a lot of time for. And the reason I'm going to put it on her is that, yes, and it's going to go back to
because she's the veteran actor.
Well, level of commitment to the role and putting the work in. And, part of this could be the producer, part of this could be the stunt team, but those were the most wooden, scripted, counted by the numbers lightsaber fights I've ever seen, ever. And one of the things I could say for recent Star Wars, specifically the prequels and then the sequels, is that at least the lightsaber fights brought something new. And this is not to go against the original trilogy. The lightsaber fights in there had a different style. It was more of a theater style, and it was good.
Mm-hmm.
But when they brought the wushu martial arts style, that was really exciting and cool as well. And you contrast that last fight between Morgan Elsbeth and Ahsoka versus something like Hayden Christensen versus Ewan McGregor. It's not even in the same galaxy.
I will push back on that a little bit. Out of this entire series, that was actually the best fight of the whole show.
But that's not saying much.
Yeah. I mean, the bar's low. The bar's low.
But that don't make it good just because it's the best one we've seen. Don't make it good. That's like somebody that can't cook and they put together something. That food's still nasty. That don't make it good food.
And I'll tell you this. I honestly think that's the best fight because she was up against Dena Inosanto. And I think having an actual martial artist fight against her actually made her
goddaughter.
Okay, yeah. I'm with Nims. It was worse. You could see them thinking. You could see them counting the beats. You could see them. They had openings to swing and end the fight, and they didn't. And a lot of their defense postures were awkward. I'm with Nims on this one.
No. What's terrible? What's terrible is the blaster blocking. I'm blocking. Look at how slowly I'm blocking these blasters.
Let me go back to that fight scene, though. Not only was it wooden and slow, and this is not so. And I honestly think, I'm sorry, I think Rosario Dawson was awesome in Mandalorian playing and doing the fighting there.
Mm-hmm.
The difference here, and they've hinted at it, is that she wasn't available and didn't put in the work.
Mm.
Well, if you're the damn producer and your actress isn't putting in the work, then you either delay production until she can put in the work or you replace her ass. It's one or the other because you could see it. And not only that, there were moments where the footsteps, they're focusing on her footwork and it was completely off. She stumbles and stuff. She's supposed to be a Jedi that is graceful, and there was stumbling and fumbling and crossed up feet. I'm like, you're dead. 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 And so, I could go off on the writing and everything else forever and ever, and we've done a lot of that already. But I'm sorry, some of this has to go on Rosario Dawson. And for me, she got a paycheck and she phoned it in.
See, now, that thing Nims just said about counting the times when the fight should have been over, I was doing that too. I was screaming at the screen. I'm like, nope, you should have been over. Should have been dead. And then I'm going to throw it to Steve, but remind me, we're going to talk about what happened to lightsabers in this series, about the way they ruined.
You mean shiny battle sticks? Because they don't cut through shit anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Steve, let me hear your thoughts about the title character. It's supposed to be about her.
And she's the most boring thing in this whole thing. Like she is Xanax Ahsoka or Xanax Ahsoka. That's the way I would probably put her. Ahsoka, yeah. And the thing is I largely blame the writing, probably more than Rosario Dawson. I do blame her for the fight scenes. Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff, not defensible. Totally get that. But I think a lot of you'd think that she would be able to emote, in the actual parts where she needed to emote. But the thing is, they don't give her anything. She just goes through the motions, really. She's like, okay, let's get Ahsoka from point A to point B. Oh, yeah, here's the reconciliation with Sabine. It's completely unemotional and devoid of any tension, even though it should have been written where Ahsoka's like, what are you doing? What were you thinking? You know, you almost doomed the galaxy. I should have taken the other kid as my apprentice. What's going on with you? There was none of this. It's more like, okay.
What do you mean almost? Thrawn got away.
Thrawn got away. And on top of that, and that's Sabine's fault. And does Ahsoka get mad at her? Like, because of you, all this happened. No, it's like, all right, we're just going to work together now because that's what the plot requires. And it's just, this is not Ahsoka at all, like at all. And I can't blame Rosario Dawson for that. It's the writing. She's not acting with the same edge that she used to in the Siege of Mandalore, in Twilight of the Apprentice. I am no Jedi. I'm trying to imagine what Rosario Dawson would have done with those kinds of scenes. And I guarantee you it would have been better than this. And it's because the writing's not there. And I will say, I think a lot of it is that Filoni got interfered with and he just gave up. Because it's clear that there was an idea behind this story. There are so many things that could have been great that were there. Baylan Skoll is still an interesting character, but it goes nowhere.
It was definitely tied
on that. It was tied with the Mortis stuff, and it was clear that Filoni was going somewhere with that. The whole idea with the witches of Dathomir, basically being the three witches from Macbeth, to Thrawn. There's something that could have been going on there. All the stuff going on with Peridia could have been really interesting. The Night Troopers. I mean, there are definitely good ideas here. And I think that originally what probably Filoni pitched was better. The thing of it is that unfortunately, and it's clear that Kathleen Kennedy has her fingerprints all over this, is like, no, we have to turn this into a story that, elevates the girl boss characters. And this is why the characters have nothing to do with the characters that Filoni wrote in Rebels, nothing to do with the characters that Filoni wrote in Clone Wars, because I refuse to believe that Filoni just forgot how to write those characters, some of whom he created. I do not believe that for 1 minute. This was interference. He just went along with it. I
will add this. It's like there was one. I mean, there's a lot of writing mistakes, but there was one glaring mistake. And if Filoni did this, then he should be taken out and dragged out. I gotta believe this is interference, and you touched on it early. And I meant to bring this up, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did want to mention this one. And it's when Ahsoka meets Sabine again for the first time, and then says, "I will back you up no matter what." That is the biggest BS modern take inserted.
Why would she do that?
You would never say that.
She let Ahsoka down time and time again, doomed the galaxy.
If ever there was
that is not a natural reaction for her.
If ever there was a master apprentice teaching moment here, you saw it with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to a certain extent. Even though Qui-Gon was the hippie Jedi, he still could get on Obi-Wan. You saw it with Obi-Wan and Anakin. You saw it with Yoda and Luke. It's like
Obi-Wan and Anakin.
When you have a master apprentice, a parent-child relationship, there are times when you have to be stern and teach the lesson. And Sabine effed up. She put the whole galaxy in danger, and now the galaxy is reaping what she sowed. And Ahsoka is just like, no, I will back you up no matter what.
If that's the case,
not earned at all.
If that's the case, when Ahsoka ran into Vader, she should have just backed him up.
Yeah, what the hell does that mean? And then she said, Anakin backed me up all the time. Once again, and that was another thing. That was a retcon because Anakin rode her ass for the mistake she made in Rebels. Or not Rebels, in Clone Wars.
That's a pure girl boss move. Yeah. That, that whole unconditional, whatever you do, right or wrong, you can't do anything wrong. Yeah, no. And I also want to interject here with the story point that I meant to mention before, and it's this right here. One word, accessibility. I was thinking earlier when I was preparing for this review that one of the reasons the Avengers worked is because you didn't have to see the lead-up movies. It enriched the experience if you did. Mm-hmm. If you watched the solo movies of Cap, Thor, and Iron Man, and we had seen, the last time we'd seen the Hulk was actually Norton's Hulk. So if you had seen those films before you watched the Avengers, it enriched the experience, but you didn't have to see them. And because the movie has enough explanation and exposition and has enough connectivity, and they explain right in the big exposition scene that S.H.I.E.L.D. started preparing for outer space fights because of Thor. And Thor was like, well, Loki's here because, you got the attention and you're prepared for a higher form of war. And they're on and on. And so they explained it. They explained the villain, they explained the motivation, they explained what was going to happen. And the characters had enough moments for you to understand who they were. With this show, which is why I'm not watching Heir to the Empire, with this show, if you didn't see Clone Wars, Rebels, and the Ahsoka episodes of Mando, there is absolutely no connectivity in these events. The emotional moments don't land, and then the directing of those moments were nothing but long, slow stares, like we're moving through molasses with everybody standing around talking at speed, looking at each other. And I'm like, if you hadn't watched the previous material, there's no way to connect with this material. There's no way. You don't know who Thrawn is. You don't know the relationship between Sabine and Ezra. You don't know, and they use member berries. They use bringing Anakin back, but you still need to know the kind of relationship and why he called her Snips, and you still need to know what happened between them to be emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And
I've got something for you.
For storytelling. You did
And
not.
then other things they need to explain and don't. So
I got something for you. I'm going to show you.
Accessible to your audience. Go ahead.
I'm going to show you guys how easy it is for somebody to play all these roles. All right. This is my impression of Ahsoka. This is my impression of Hera. This is my impression of Sabine. Always with the arms crossed, looking over somewhere. With Ahsoka, you just got to close your eyes a little bit.
To be serious, though, the part that really concerns me is that we've done a number of shows on here, from the Wheel of Time to Rings of Power to Ahsoka to Harley Quinn, and it's like equality is not a bad thing. If you want equal time to story, that's fine. But you know what? Storytelling and character arcs don't change based on what's between your legs. You know what? And women, here's a to the people writing these stories, women are just as capable of fucking up and making stupid decisions as men are. There's a big news flash for all of you. And then learning from those, and then learning from those and growing as a character and having an interesting story arc. Because you know what? A lot of times when a main character does something stupid or messes up, that makes their arc interesting because they have to redeem themselves.
Now, you know what the thing that pisses me off the most about Sabine? Her character.
Wait. We're not going to Sabine yet because we have a lot to say about her. We gotta save her because Lord
save the worst for last.
Yeah. So
there's no saving Sabine, but we'll get into that.
I mean, but it's just as someone who loves fiction of all types and has read it throughout I'm just thinking of so many great Juliet of Romeo and Juliet has an amazing arc, but she did stupid stuff and paid for it.
Lady
Guinevere. Yeah. Look at what she did and her mistakes, but how it drove the story. And she paid for them. And not only did she pay for them, Arthur paid for them and Lancelot paid for them because they made their own mistakes. You know? And the list just goes on and on and on and on. And suddenly we've come to this point where the male characters still make stupid mistakes. They still do. But suddenly, if you're writing a female character because there's some sensibility out there, you're not allowed to make them human beings. Because that's what they are now. That's why they're so uninteresting to the majority of people, because we can't relate to them because they're not human.
And if they are allowed to make mistakes in the script, it just gets a pass.
Yeah,
they'll never know.
Is that
they'll never know what you gave up.
Yeah.
There's another one. That's a great example.
On the one hand, they don't make mistakes, or they're not intended to make mistakes. When they make mistakes, it's unintended by the writers, and we pick up on it because we see that this doesn't make any sense, and then we're watching it in frustration because they never learn anything because the writers don't think they should.
And there's
but
never any
the audience is watching them and saying, "Why are you not learning from anything you do?" It's an exercise in frustration.
Zero growth, zero character growth.
It is a line. Your character arc is a line.
What we're talking about is identity politics. when you are now both hired and characters are written based on demographics and not any type of arc. And also what we're talking about is emotion-based thinking. Emotion-based thinking is, I did it because I felt like doing it. And then, like you said, when you just get it past, right, when you just get it past, that is not the real world. If we did things based on what we feel like doing, if we even say things based on what we're feeling in the moment, there are many times horrific consequences. Yeah. And then we come to our fiction and we see characters making decisions that change the galaxy for the worse, that put millions, hundreds of millions, billions, hundreds of billions of lives in danger. When Claremont and Byrne did the original Dark Phoenix saga, and when Jean went bad and she consumed a sun, and it ended up killing 6 billion inhabitants on a nearby planet, the Debari, she got called on that by Lalandra. She was like, you can't just go into a star system and consume a star and kill all those beings and ain't no answer.
Yeah.
But now, so we're going to get to Sabine in a minute. So with Ahsoka and all this girl boss and identity politics stuff, bad performances all around, and the most unconvincing lightsaber fights I've ever seen in my life. I told you, the net result for me has been a complete disconnect from the actual character, which you have to work very hard. You have to work very Nims, not the Al screensaver. Anyway.
The baby Al. Oh no, my eyes.
You have to work very hard to take an original character that was very well flushed out and have an actor's performance and everything in the series disconnect you.
I apologize that popped up. That's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. So
disconnect you from that character. So let's move on to. I remember, y'all, when I met Timothy Zahn. I met him in person. We were at a convention together, and I was like, dude, you say, I mean, I didn't say anything. He hasn't heard it a million times, but I was like, I love your work. You saved Star Wars. And he was humble, and he was laughing and joking with me. He's like, Dave, I'm out here selling my books. And he was just so cool. I was like, this is awesome. It was a geek moment, and it was awesome because he single-handedly kept interest going in the story world, and he made it better. That's the thing a lot of people don't want to say out loud. Is if you read any of the Zahn books, but especially the Heir to the Empire trilogy, he made it better. The characters he introduced, the situations we were in, Talon Card, Mara Jade is just, there's no comparison. And then I don't want to spoil for those of you in the audience that haven't read, but there were a lot of things that happened that would have been better movies than the movies that we got. So one of those characters is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, he made such an impact on me until it impacted my thinking. He said, if you want to understand a culture, you must study its art. I have never forgotten that because he used that as the entry point for every one of his attacks, every one of his plans, his military strategies. He took time studying the art because he said you can tell how it is that people think. I thought that was so true and so real world until I incorporated it into my worldview. That's how powerful that presentation of that fictional character was, because it's so true. You understand what current standards of beauty are. You'll understand the prejudices of the time. You'll understand the conventions of the time. You'll understand the values and the mores of the time if you study the art. That was just so powerful. And Thrawn is a fictional character. So if you don't know him from the books, Thrawn is a thinker. He's like Batman and Brainiac combined, because he would outthink you before he'd outfight you. He'd be 12 steps ahead of you because he studied you enough to anticipate your moves like a chess game. And he wasn't one to have fits of temper. I mean, he's not a force user. He wasn't one to have fits of temper and choke out lieutenants like Vader would, but Thrawn it was because he was so cold, he was so scary, because he was so calculating, because he was like a constantly coiled python that at any minute could spring on you so fast, and he carried that kind of energy. And by the time we see him, if this is your first introduction to the character in this series, what you saw was Diathron. What you saw was somebody who couldn't think their way out of a paper bag. What you saw was somebody whose stratagems had no sense to them, because Thrawn had Sabine in his hand, in cuffs, in prison. And if you're going to kill her, why don't you just kill her? Thrawn had intel on where Ezra was. So if you're going to kill him, why don't you just kill him? Thrawn had Balin and Shin in the same place, could have taken them out if you want to take them out. And here's the big one before I throw it to my co-host. Here's the big kahuna. Ripley's line from Aliens. I suggest we take off and nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. He had a Star Destroyer. So if he wanted to destroy all them people, all he had to do was take off and leave them on the planet.
Well, apparently you can't hit 3 wargs running from a mile out.
Right. So I'm like, what is your strategy here? Are you double dealing on Balin and Shin? Are you trying to get rid of Sabine and Ezra because you had more than ample opportunity? What are you doing? Were you trying to lure Ahsoka here because you didn't get rid of her? You should have. So, I couldn't figure out. And once again, Thrawn always pulls together at the end these threads that he'd been weaving that you may not have picked up on, but he's got you at the end because he wove the web and you didn't see it. Now you're caught in it. But this was like, you left every single one of your enemies alive, and one of them is stowed aboard your ship, and you didn't care. Then what was the point of all this posturing? So I know we had the scene where he was storing his secret cargo, and I don't know that, but his relationships with all the other characters don't make any sense, or they didn't make any sense to me. So maybe I was missing something, which is why I want to hear what you guys had to say. So let's talk about Diathron. Start with Steve.
Oh my God. The thing is that we saw a fairly well-written Thrawn in season 3 of Rebels. Granted, that's probably because Zahn was more hands-on with that one. But that showed that, it was possible to portray Thrawn decently well in Disney Star Wars. Because the main thing is he did have the interest in art. He did have the thing where the only way that you really can beat him is by denying information to him, which is how they won in that season. And that was how they beat him in The Last Command, was because there was a particular bit of information that Thrawn didn't know, and it bit him at the very end. That's how you beat him. None of that was here. And in fact, it's like Thrawn completely seems to have forgotten that, he is interested in art. And it should have come up because he could have said, I have studied Togrutan art, and I can therefore predict with 90% accuracy that this is what a Togrutan Jedi would do. Something of that nature, we could have seen that. There are bits and pieces of what he does that could make some sense if executed right. I get the idea of, okay, we are going to box Sabine into the outcome that I want. And that is how you deal with somebody that unpredictable. Okay, there's some logic to that, but I don't think that really happened. The only reason she follows that is because that's what the plot requires her to do, because she doesn't have a plan either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that he predicted the plan that she would take, and then she followed that plan that he predicted that she would have. It's that, she followed the plot threads to where she needed to go and didn't actually have a plan. And then there are other things that just really bothered me about Thrawn in general in these episodes. One of them is the whole scene at the end with Shin, going over, holding the lightsaber over her head, trying to basically take over that tribe. Thrawn should have done that years ago. He should have done that with the entire planet. The real Thrawn would have brought them all under his rule within months, probably. He probably would have had something prepared in the years that he probably would have conquered a good chunk of that entire space, because I don't believe it's just that planet. He had to have done some exploring. He had to have put together ships. They had natural resources. Why didn't you do that?
Where was the Katana fleet in this galaxy?
Yeah, the way I would have set things up was, okay, you find Thrawn on Peridia, but not only is he not alone,
but it's a whole empire out there.
He has an entire empire and a massive fleet. And the threat would have been, oh my God, we got to stop this fleet from coming over to the New Republic and just straight up conquering it. Because in a few years, Thrawn would have set up an entire army. This whole business of, oh, we're running out of resources. Oh, we're running out of men. No, that is not what great
10 years.
That is not what a great general does. Because the problem is that Dave Filoni is writing him like a supervillain. He is not writing him like a great general of antiquity. This is not what an Alexander would have done. This is not what a Napoleon would have done. They would have found a way to make an army from anything. You use what you find and you build an army, and then you use that, for a larger vision. That's not what Thrawn does. He just seems to be sitting there, just kind of, waiting for, utilizing his assets bit by bit. And I'm just like, that just makes absolutely no sense, and also Thrawn is unique among Imperial leaders in one way that should have been painfully obvious here. And that is that Thrawn is not a xenophobic, alien-hating racist like some of the other Imperials are. He is an alien himself, so he would have said, okay, these are people that can be used as assets for my own designs. And that's what, and he would have recruited them. He would have inspired their loyalty. He's the kind of leader I could have believed would have been able to do that. So he should have had an entire space empire and a massive fleet waiting to take over the New Republic, like right there. And that's not what he does. He's just sitting there, seemingly waiting for Elsbeth to get to him. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But, what are you doing in the meantime? What are you using those 10 years for? You're just completely wasting them. And then other things that he does, it's like the whole thing in the last episode where they clip the wings. Okay, I have no problem with taking down the ship and stranding them. But that should have been the opening salvo to something that would have been, that most novices probably would have thought of to do, which is we go and nuke the site from orbit. You have the Jedi and their ship right out there where your men are nowhere near. You have TIE bombers. You have air superiority. You have a Star Destroyer. Why are you not flying people over there and dropping massive bombs on them? You don't even have to bring in, they don't even have to be in range to shoot them. You could just have them fly high enough, drop the bomb. There's no more Jedi. Jedi cannot force block, a aerial bombardment.
Well, apparently they can, because they can't hit shit in this show.
Yeah.
Even from a spaceship.
Yeah. They go running under later, and all they do is hit them with turbo lasers. And I would have bought that if Thrawn was hurting them where he wanted them to go for a specific reason. But there's none of this expressed. None of this. And, Thrawn's thinking, I don't know. It's kind of like, you magnificent bastard, I read your book.
Yes.
And he should be the Rommel in this instance. But, it's more in this case, like the way that you use that line as a joke, pointing out that, the leader in question doesn't have a really good plan when he should. And this is the frustration I have with Thrawn. This is not Timothy Zahn's Thrawn. If you guys read Heir to the Empire, even if you read Zahn's Disney Star Wars novels, which I have read some of them, you see a much deeper thinking of Thrawn. But then, Timothy Zahn's his creator, and he knows Thrawn inside and out. You expect, him to do this. But Filoni, you would think that he would have learned from making season 3 of Rebels that, Thrawn is somebody who's always a step ahead. He's somebody who studies their art, and he's somebody who is a general first. They even call him a warlord. And it's like, he's not acting like a warlord. He is acting like a mustache twirling supervillain. And he's not acting like a leader of men. And the other thing that really bothers me is how Thrawn suddenly finds his men disposable when he didn't even in season 4 of Rebels. He was trying not to kill his own men. Here he's saying, "Oh well, they are acceptable losses." That is not what the true Thrawn would believe, because he would see soldiers as the assets. He doesn't think of weapons and materials as assets. He thinks of soldiers and the way they think as an asset. And that's why they follow him. That's why they're loyal to him, and that's why they would die before him. They're right that these troopers would give their lives for Thrawn, and I could see we'll become your undead soldiers, no problem, because we believe in you and the Empire. But would Thrawn really do that for such minimal gain? Did he really need to sacrifice all these men? I don't think he did. I don't think he did at all.
See, when your whole character is thinking, and you don't write the character to think, you have failed.
If I am coming up with better plans than Grand Admiral Thrawn, you've written them wrong.
Simple. Bracy, thoughts on Thrawn?
Oh boy, here we go. Here comes another one. This is a full-on rant episode, ain't it? So, Steve hits a lot of the points. Thrawn is, once again, not Thrawn. Thrawn is not about the Empire. Thrawn is about order. The Empire was always a means to an end for him. So every time Thrawn is like, for the Empire, for the Empire, for the Empire, is like, who are you?
We're like, which dude is that?
Who skinned you and put on the blue skin? Like, that's not Thrawn. And again, Mikkelsen, terrific actor. I love the gravitas he has. I love the calm delivery. He is trying his best to be this character, given, once again, the material he's gotten. And there are moments where Thrawn actually seems intelligent. Hey, they're hiding out in the Saturn ring of dead whale parts. And by the way, don't call space whales. That's dumb. They don't call Minox space bats. Call them like Chris Claremont did in the X-Men. Call them the Acanti. Call them something alien, because it's an alien world we're dealing with here. It's stupid when you use one of our words for some creature that looks like it looks like Sharktopus, but nicer, flying through space. Don't be doing that. All right, so Thrawn is so dumb, though. Just when I start to have a little hope for him, when he's exuding some of that charisma and some of that gravitas, like having the Night Sisters pinpointing them, because they're dialed into the Force. Best way to find somebody who uses the Force, and it works out. But then what does he do? Hey, send some fighters after him. All right, that's cool. Just a few. Yeah, just a couple, just a few. We have. I've seen the inside of the hangar. We've got a whole lot of TIE fighters, not just like the, Balin's fighter group that he has. Why don't we send a couple of squadrons? That'd probably do the job, right? Right. So Steve, to your point, hey, when for whatever reason Ahsoka and the gang decide like we've got to stop Thrawn from leaving, but we're gonna travel along with the space snails on the ground. We're in such a hurry. We're going 5 miles an hour on the ground. I can sit outside on the top of my shit and not worry about getting rolled off or nothing. Why don't we send 3 squadrons down there after that? If they're going to hang out on the ground and be easily bombed, as we've seen them get easily bombed by 2 TIE fighters, what would 30 have done? Well, that would have been game over. We can't
whole flotilla, they would have died. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would have been the smart thing to do. Sabine gets there like, Balin, I gave him my word that I would deliver her safely. Thrawn's like, hey, that was pretty cool. Yeah, all these 100 guys in this room, go ahead and shoot her because she's not wearing the helmet. She left that behind for some stupid reason. Oh my God! And don't get me started on the helmet. I'll get to that later. Just all these dumb things. Why are the hyperspace wings not attached? Why isn't the ring already attached to the ship? They've been loading it for 3 turns of the planet. So 3 days they've been loading this thing up. Why don't you go ahead and have the hyperspace ring attached? And when it's time to go, just go. And even when they were like taking off, when did he say like destroy the edifice? When they're just hanging out on, I was like, I'd have been shooting that on the way up. You wouldn't even got to the top of that thing if your turbo lasers can't hit 3 small running creatures. If the flak from the explosions can't take them out, then destroy the tower. No Jedi is jumping 400 feet into the air to catch that. I don't give a crap what kind of force push your novice can do with her Mando crap powers. And again, the loss of resources and manpower, he doesn't give a crap about his man. That is not Thrawn. And don't even get me started on friggin' zombie stormtroopers. I know they did it in the comic book, and it was dumb then, and it's dumb now, and it's been a one-time thing. It's a side mission. It's an Elseworlds. It's an alt quest. It's not the main line. Don't put that in the main show. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Do something else. The Dark Troopers, the full-on robots, something that's tougher than your average guy. But don't do stupid shit like that. And we've got these blast doors. You do? You've got. Okay, you're going to sacrifice a few guys to slow them down? And we see like half a dozen blast doors. Why are they all open? Look at how long it took Qui-Gon to get through one set of blast doors in the prequel. Why weren't all of those closed to slow them down? You didn't need to sacrifice all those dudes. You could have I've got a minefield around the planet. You know what else would have been cool? Blast doors with mines on the other side. So as they go burrowing through, they're attracted to the heat or the, whatever, or you just set them off hey, they're breaching the door. Set off all the bombs, please. Boom! No problem. Simple as. But no, we can't have a so-called tactical genius actually act like one. If you're not smart enough to write the character, hire somebody who is. There's lots of writers right now in Hollywood who are apparently quite available. So, find somebody with some quality. Get Timothy Zahn back on, for God's sakes. My brain is hurting from the stupid.
You have to be smart enough to know you're not smart enough to write the character.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because this is migraine-inducing stupidity.
That's what I'm saying.
Character after character after character. Yep. And it hurts the most to see the supposedly smartest man in the room be treated like a total dumbass. But he's acting like he's, this is still a victory for me. And even his allies, Elspeth's looking at me like, are you sure about that? Are you really sure about that? Okay, I don't think it. Yeah, it's I do not think it means what you think it means.
I never thought that we would see more damage than Admiral Gender Studies and her hyperdrive attack, and she goes into warp and it cuts through the ships.
Yeah, because
the way people have defended that, I never thought we see an event that was worse than that.
When you introduce something new, you have to think about its effect on the canon. So light speed missiles, relativistic missiles could destroy planetoids. There's so much destruction from that. The quotient of mass at the near speed of light hitting an object is a force unlike anything else. We've seen them illustrate that. So now we have not only is Thrawn loose, we're going to repopulate Dathomir with Night Sisters and grandmothers, and all of a sudden I'm going if they had this ability. Now you've opened the can of worms. Now we have zombies in the mainline Star Wars. So why was Darth Sidious able to kill off all of the Night Sisters on Dathomir if they could have just voodooed up all their dead people as zombies to keep fighting? They'd have swarmed the crap out of General Grievous.
Why would Palpatine have killed them if they know how to do that? They could just have brought Palpatine back.
Right, so that's what I meant about the hyperdrive, because apparently we no longer have hyperdrive. We have hyperdrive, because if you really want to go somewhere in the galaxy, you got to fit 6 more hyperdrive engines onto your ring and then put your ship in that. And I'm like, well, that would have been awful convenient at any point in the franchise.
I mean, it's just like when J.J. Abrams introduced transgalactic teleporters and tribbles bringing people back to life in Star Wars. You're like, Star Trek, you just broke it. We don't need starships anymore. If we can transport ourselves light years away
to Kronos, we don't need ships.
Yeah.
Right, that's right.
And they're writing this and not thinking about the implications. They're just thinking well, this sounds cool.
That's why I started off with macro vision, big picture thinking. You have to have that if you're going to be writing for a franchise. Okay, and for those of you that are writers watching us now, you need a story Bible. You need a character Bible. You need something that people can reference to understand what's already been established before you come running in doing stuff that everybody's scratching their head. Because I'm like, when
continuity and canon have to matter, because if they don't, the structure of your fictional world completely falls apart. Peter David said something to this effect a while back. I just happened to see that quote again the other day, and it's 100% true. If nothing matters, then in fact nothing matters. When DC Comics back in the day was writing uh, episodic, like each comic was its own thing. There was no continuity for a period in the 70s there, and Marvel took the lead and started eating their lunch, even though DC has all the characters that everybody knows best in the world, to the MCU popped off. But Marvel started eating their lunch because they were telling better arcing stories. And I remember I read at least 3 comic books where Superman died and was supposedly dead forever. And I as a kid, I was going like, what? But I just saw him in this other comic. Is he really dead? Did they bring him back? No. That's just how they work. And that's what Star Wars has become under this leadership.
That's right. So if you show up on Dathomir and you got hyperdrive, how can you not take over the entire galaxy? It should not be a problem if you can transverse those kind of miles and you got that kind of power, and it changes the entire balance of power in the galaxy. Nims, what'd you think about Diathron?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered it really well. The only thing I'm going to say, and I think I'm going to differ a little bit from you all, is that I think Thrawn's plan with all of the people was perfectly fine and reasoned up until one point. So, putting all of your enemies in one place so you know where they are is established strategy. So he's setting, his enemies upon his enemies and getting them out of the way and getting them off his ship and getting them away from him. That's fine. In fact, I think that's good. Especially since he's in the process of doing logistics at the point. You don't want people there that could possibly screw it up. I understand that. Then
it would be nice if they'd said that, though.
Well, yes. Getting them grounded at that point by destroying the ship. That's fine. I don't think you needed to send troops because, and this is where it starts to fall apart. Thrawn is a better strategist than I could ever be. I have some training in that from, we know my background, or if you don't know my
background.
Not
according to these episodes.
You know it. But why fight when you don't need to fight? He doesn't need to fight them.
Supreme excellence in warfare is achieving victory without fighting.
Yes. It's Sun Tzu. So they are stranded ways away from there. The loading is done. There was no reason why the ISIon needed to come down into the atmosphere. Their ship is destroyed. You go up to the ISIon. And just point is, yes, they could have attached it ahead of time. Let's say there's a reason that it didn't. They didn't explain that, but let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that there's a reason. Once the loading's done, you get your ass up into the atmosphere, and then you don't care what's going down on the planet anymore. Their ship's destroyed. Who cares? Out of sight, out of mind. You hook up the thing, and you leave. And they're effectively dead for all you're concerned because they're never coming back.
That's right.
They're done. Right. So
unless the space whales come back, which is probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, but
no, it's going to be the whale of the worlds or Mortis.
But to Thrawn's way of thinking, it's like, why would he care about destroying them? He has no personal animus towards them. All of his rotten eggs were in one basket. They're now stranded on a planet millions of light years away from where he's going, and he leaves. And it's it. It's done. He didn't have to expend any resources. He didn't have to lose anybody. He would just take off and go. And so I think that everything he did up until that last point was pretty brilliant, from a certain way of thinking, from
a certain point of view.
Yeah, from a certain point of view. But
it was at least reasonable.
Yeah. But then whoever was writing this, whoever did it, fumbled. They tripped at the 1 yard line because it was right there. You just leave. You don't have to hook up. In fact, I would say bringing down a giant ship like the I Am Scion to hook up to another giant ship hovering there is problematic that you're in gravity. It's probably better to do that in zero gravity.
Mm-hmm.
So, but why would you do that? Why would you risk bringing another ship down into an atmosphere? You just go up to where that ship is, you hook up, and you take off. And their ship is destroyed down on space. I guarantee you, how boss Sabine is, she's not going to force push Ezra 300 miles into the atmosphere. It's just
That's right.
you can't even those writers can't write that. They know it's too ridiculous. So yeah, I just don't get it. And all the other stuff you said, it makes perfect sense. But this is the one where they really lost me, because up until that point, I was like, yeah, I could see what he's doing. But then he started going into this thing where we're going to fight them. I'm like, why would you fight them? No reason you would fight them is to keep them occupied. But why are you keeping them occupied at that point? The loading's done.
Yeah.
And that's where it all fell apart.
That's why I bought the idea. Okay, we're going to clip their wings. Okay, that makes some sense. And then you clip their wings and you don't want them to follow you. Well, there are ways to do that.
You
without risking anybody.
And it's not even, I mean, but to be perfectly honest with you, that's not even grand strategy. That's basic level strategy. If you don't need to fight, you don't fight. Because when you fight, you never know what's going to happen.
It costs resources.
Well,
and to Steve's earlier point, and mine as well, there's absolutely nothing better than air superiority.
Yeah.
It changes the whole, character of the battlefield, and they had that in spades.
Because that's literal high ground. Literal.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep it moving so we can finish, because I know we got a lot more to say about a lot more different people.
Yep.
First one I want to jump to quickly is Morgan, because I couldn't believe the level of stupid I'm looking at. So basically, they were giving her a glow up to say, if you're not part of the club, you're at least at a higher level than you are now. Can you handle that? Yes. You pledge yourself to the teachings? Yes. Will you give yourself to this new calling? Yes. I stopped by to tell you, your glow up is not supposed to look like the first stroke. It looked like she had it. By the time I got through it, it looked like she had a stroke. That's the first thing. Second thing that jumped out at me was, how come if you're being glowed up by witches, you're not using more incantations and spells? Because they gave you the sword of halitosis, and now you're doing hand-to-hand combat. Now you're doing hand-to-hand fighting. So that looked more like a demotion. Looked like you should be able to do more stuff or whatever. But now she's fighting hand-to-hand, and I'm like, how is that a glow up? How is that you're basically fighting like a lot of the foot soldiers do, but you're not using more stuff or whatever? And I'm like, so that whole thing confused me. And then she's the other equation of the slow middle-aged women lightsaber fights. And I was like, even with all we talked about with Rosara, I'm looking at her fight and I'm like, you're not better now than you were all the way during this series, and you're not more interesting now. And this is a demotion. And I'm like, both of y'all so slow. Somebody should have took off some limbs or a nose hair or an eyebrow or something. Both of y'all, I'm like, these blows are coming in molasses, man. They're like, whoosh. Then this slow roundhouse. That's the one that made me laugh. She did this roundhouse that was so slow, my dead grandmother could have blocked it. I'm like, really? Really? That's your glow up? Is Disney martial arts really? Are you doing drunk food? So I couldn't believe. And then she ends up dying, which can also tie us into the lightsaber conversation, because Ahsoka did some kind of move that wasn't flippity foo, but it was a reverse angle. She pushed her sword to the ground, turned around, and did a double strike in the middle with both a lightsaber and the sword of halitosis. And I'm saying to myself, hold on just 1 minute. Have we not established that you can be run through with a lightsaber more than once? Because Kenobi saw us having Reva getting stabbed through the sternum as a child.
And as an adult.
And then this show, showed us dark peroxide stabbing Sabine, and I'm like, all you gave her was a little scratch across the abdomen, and then she just fall over dead. I was like, wait just a minute. All right, who's got a rant about Morgan and lightsabers?
A rant?
Not a
Oh,
rant.
I got
per se.
yeah.
All right, Steve got a
let
rant,
me
so
start.
Steve, you go.
Yeah, they wasted Morgan Elsbeth completely. And it's
Agreed.
so obvious that she was intended to die the entire time. She was set up to just get Thrawn back and then just end up being lightsaber fodder for Ahsoka. That she does absolutely nothing. And the thing is like, I like the idea of her being, you know, a Night Sister.
Yes.
I dig that idea. I think that added something to her. Do they do anything to that makes her character interesting? No, not even in the slightest. She is every bit as interesting as she was before. And she was created in Mando to really be a one-off villain. And it's okay for villains to be more than that if they have the character there to do that. You know, if you flesh her out and you give her justify reasons to bring her back. But that's not what's here. This is just saying, okay, we've already established that she works for Thrawn, so we're going to use her as a convenient plot device to get everybody over to Peridia, and then they do their thing. And now that you're over here, you know, we're just going to do this magic thing, and, you know, we're just going to just wash our hands of you. It's kind of like Dave Filoni is Thrawn or is Diet Thrawn here in the case that, you know, I create you, I put you on the scene, and then once I got everything I want out of you, I'm just going to set you up to die, and that's the story. And the thing is, and Morgan actually goes along with this, like, yeah, I will undertake this duty, and she has the nerve to act surprised that she gets set up by Thrawn. Gee, you might think that maybe the tactical genius might have set you out there with the intent of not coming back. You know what his plan is, kind of. You know he's trying to get out of there and buy time. That's all you're there to do is buy time. You're not there to do anything substantial. You are cannon fodder, just like the TIE fighters are cannon fodder, just like the night troopers are cannon fodder. How do you think that you're any more special than they are? How do you think that you enter into Diet Thrawn's calculus any differently than they do? Why are you not saying, hey, why are you leaving me here? I want to go back.
But see, that's what I thought was
what
going
I
to happen.
did for you. Why are you leaving me here? Nothing.
That's
Nothing.
what I thought was going to happen with her power glow up, that she was going to come to such a level of power till she would reestablish herself as necessary in the mix.
Yeah,
that's why I couldn't believe she was
that.
doing hand-to-hand combat.
I'm just gonna go to the end, and she doesn't learn any spells. I mean, you would think that she would have cast some spells. That would have been interesting to see, like her actually doing magic. There's none of that. It's just, you know, okay, we give you these powers so that you can conveniently be powerful enough, in theory, to stand up to Ahsoka because she's got all these force powers, and you need to have something to, you know, counter her with that. That's not entirely unreasonable as a writing standpoint. But it's like you have to establish her threat, and you need to see like Ahsoka actually getting her ass kicked. That would be nice. No, that doesn't happen. It's just you just set out over there to be cannon fodder, and then be betrayed and then die. You know, and there's no more thought put in her than that, when she could have been much more with the background that she had.
Now I got to put another story point in here before I throw it back to Nims embracing it. This right here. One of the things you have to learn how to do is you have to keep your antagonist and protagonist in the same space, or you have to keep them on each other's mind, which is what the Terminator does. The Terminator has so much presence until even when he's off screen, he's still there with Reese and Sarah. Same with Vader. Vader's chasing Luke the entire movie of Empire, so they're not in the same space until they get to Cloud City, but they're still connected because he's on his mind. The final fight should have been Ahsoka and Baylan. And the final fight should have been Sabine and Shin. I'm like, how did y'all miss that?
They were wasted this episode completely. They're hardly in it. And it's like everything we've seen with Ahsoka, her biggest challenge has been fighting Baylan. Baylan keeps kicking her ass. His threat has been firmly established. And does she get that, climactic fight against him that she should have? No, because he's too busy looking at Gondor statues over, on the planet.
That's where I thought we were
The gates
going,
of
man.
Gondor.
Behold the Argonath.
That's where I thought we were going, man, because I'm like, Ahsoka needs a rematch where she asserts her skill, or she learns some new moves that she does, like Rocky against Clubber Lang. She learns how to do some rope-a-dope. She does something he hasn't seen before and beats him.
I do have a mini rant about Morgan. So
Okay.
Why don't you go next then?
all right. Perhaps it's the horror writer in me, but they wasted. All right. I'm going to, first of all, I'm just going to say this out loud, in that I think Morgan is a throwaway character. I think she's a dead end. There was no point in keeping her around, but that became obvious a long time ago. But you have 3 Dathomir witches who are sinister. In the lore, Dathomir witches, Night Sisters, creep Sith out. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You have the chance here to do something. Morgan is a true believer. She is committed to the cause. You've established this. Whether we believe that Zahn wants to bring the Empire back, let's put that aside and just say that we'll go with it for a moment. But Morgan is a true believer. How more effective would it be in that? Are you ready to take your place? Yes. Are you ready for the power? Yes. And then she gets it. She gets ripped apart. And Ahsoka and Ezra sense a disturbance in the Force as something sinister and dark, as the Dathomir witches tear her soul apart and turn it into dark Force energy and bring the worst nightmares of all time to life to fight off these people as they're coming in, as they're getting away. And Morgoth is screaming. That you see her soul screaming in the dark side of the Force as her life force is literally being ripped apart.
Like maybe turn her into some sort of predatory embodiment of the dark side of the Force.
And now you see the Dathomir witches for next season as a whole other thing that we're like, oh, fudge, And to me, that was just screaming out right there. She's sitting there looking all bright-eyed at them. They're like, are you ready? Yes. Are you this? And I was like, oh, I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready. Like, horror writer in me was going,
bring on the average horror.
This looks clear. Give it to her, And they didn't give it to her. And I was like, oh, come on. Come on. It was right there.
No, that's 100% an alley-oop that they missed.
Yeah.
I'll
also say they wasted Diana Lee Inosanto because she's definitely very good in this episode.
Yeah,
and she's very good with given what she's given. I mean, yeah, the character's not great, but the actress is very good, and she's a great martial artist, and they just totally wasted her here.
But your idea about her becoming a portal against her will, against dark things, and they set her up to become that portal, and we watch her die, that's brilliant.
And with that one little change, not only do you effectively put the closing chapter on this throwaway character, make her to death meaningful, and you elevate these Dathomir witches and Thrawn, who is sitting there looking on, who had at least some inkling of what was going to happen in the first place. And it's like, yeah, she's outlived her usefulness now. The Dathomir witches want to do this. You're my allies. Feel free. She gets torn apart. We're like, oh, hell. The Dathomir witches now, we're all waiting for, can you imagine if that hit next season, the first time they show up on screen, we're like, oh, what the hell is going to happen now?
She was lured there. She could have been lured there as a sacrifice. Yeah, and unwitting. That would have been really smart.
It
that
was
would on both the Dathomiri's and on Thrawn's part.
If she thinks she's going to be there to join the Night Sisterhood, and that's not what they need her for, like, the shock and surprise as she's ripped apart to create some new awfulness would have been amazing. And I imagine Thrawn sitting over there for the first time, like having a little slip of control as he realizes, like, oh, maybe I'm the one who's gotten in bed with something I shouldn't. As he just he's looking, but he just kind of like lifts his eyebrows in surprise a little bit.
And it fits into the lore because everything we know about the Dathomir sisters is the Sith were creeped out by them. And
I mean, look at what they did to
even Count Dooku didn't like them.
Yeah.
Remember what they did to Dooku using Sith's their own sorcery. They totally wrecked his stuff.
So I mean, it was there for the taking, and I thought they were going to go there, I mean, it was set up in perfect horror movie mode. The way she was looking at them with the bright eyes, and they approached her and they looked menacing, it was like a horror movie trope, but it was of the good type. I was waiting for her to be the innocent lamb that's slaughtered, and they didn't do it. And I'm like, come on. You don't have to be a great writer to see that. You really don't. So
to recognize that level of alley-oop.
You've got to be at least competent.
This is the problem with the series in general. There's so many good things that could have been there, that there were so many elements that could have been made to use to build a great story around, and they just drop them. This is why it's such a disappointment to me.
Okay, to keep it moving.
No, the disappointment.
I remember how you said you don't want to talk about Ahsoka. I don't want to talk about Ezra, but we have to.
Well, I didn't get a chance to talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had more to say. Go ahead.
I didn't get to say that. Was Nim's turn. Mine is basically short and sweet though, because I, like you, DT, I thought like she's getting the glow up. She's going to get the sorcery powers, and this is the only thing that puts her on par. Because if we see her fight Ahsoka, just melee, we already know she can't handle that. Ahsoka's already beat her. I mean, she does better this time, but it's not the same thing. What's going to balance out the Force is if she has the dark sorcery, and that would have made an interesting, more interesting thing. Now in Mando, she was like supposed to be like a little one-of kind of villain, but I was kind of digging the fact that she got reached out from across the span of galaxies to be inducted into the Night Sisterhood, and here was the payoff I've been waiting for, and they so botch it. The transformation. She should have looked as creepy as the other Night Sisters. Instead, just looked like somebody just smeared ashes on her face. They should have given her these robes of office where, oh, she's really come into her power. Then she would have been sold as a threat, and I would not have killed her, because after all of this, now she is actually an interesting and invested villain. And it was just a shame to, as you guys have said, to see such a talented person wasted on this show like this.
Well, I thought about the last time I saw that plot line, and I really liked it. And it was with Fantastic Four Unthinkable, where basically Dr. Doom was trying to get to a new level of power. So he went back and got his first love. In the process of doing that, she gets sacrificed so he can open.
Don't get me started about how much I hate that story, but go on.
So she gets sacrificed so he can open the door to that new level of power to find his mom or whatever he's trying to do. And it just stunned me because it was low down and interesting at the same time.
Now, I will say this as well. As far as her fights go, I still see her using the same amount of skill, but she has ramped herself down to pace with the Rosario Dawson this episode.
Yep.
Because they were both much smoother and much quicker in Mandalorian. And it was really cool to see her working with the sword as opposed to the spear. And she was doing like lots of really cool, flashy things. I love the sweeps. I love the kicks. But you can see she's having to dial it back for Rosario, who hasn't had the time to put in the proper training for this, to keep up with her.
That's what I'm saying. I had to admit that I have been spoiled by Hayden and Ewan.
Yeah.
I've been spoiled by watching Obi-Wan and Anakin have their final fight because
those fights were good.
They so were, but I mean, they're the standard now.
And not only that, they did something in as bad as Obi-Wan is for a number of reasons. With the with the Vader and Obi-Wan fights, they captured something that had been missing in the sequels with the Star Wars lightsaber fights. There was the emotional content once again.
That's right.
The emotional content is those fights. The fights tell a story. And this fight did not tell a story. There was no drama. It was just wushu theater.
I will say,
and the Clone Wars fights were similar. Like, Ahsoka versus Maul, really good. Palpatine versus Maul and Sapaja Press, really, really great. So we've seen that Filoni has been, understands it, or at least has in the past done stuff like that. So why is it missing here? I don't know. But there is no. Baylan would have worked better for that reason too.
Yeah.
Go back and watch the Ahsoka versus Morgan lightsaber fight, but put it in 1.1 speed.
Yes.
Actually, looks a lot better.
It's a lot better.
I saw somebody do that on Twitter, and I was like, yeah.
How easy would it have been for the production people to look at it and go, you know what? This needs to be a little bit faster.
This is Filoni still has not grasped
somebody-
how to film in live action.
Somebody
This is part of it.
Somebody on Twitter ramped it up to 1.25, which was too much.
I saw that.
I know that Jackie Chan, I mentioned Jackie Chan has mastered speeding up the fights just enough so it's not noticeable, because like when they get too fast, if you're following lightsabers, it looks fine, but you start to see the bodies jerk around too much. Everything's flowing too fast. So there's a fine line, and you've got to know where to hit it to make it look good.
Yep.
That's right. All right, so moving on to Ezra, which I don't want to talk about, but we have to.
Mhm.
Ezra is about the biggest nothing burger character I've ever seen in my life, at least on this show. I know what he did in shows past, but on this show, I didn't understand Sabine's obsession with him. And then in the end, she leaves him, but we'll get to that when we get to Sabine. But Ezra was the biggest letdown, disappointment. Like, last episode, he was all, I'm one with the Force and the Force is one with me. And I got the Force as my ally. I don't need no lightsaber. And did I lose y'all?
Which is, that's fine. That's all he's
You're
been
kind
using
of
for
frozen,
10 years.
DT.
Yeah.
Yeah, all you guys are frozen.
Yeah,
too.
we
I don't know what's
we
going
can
on
hear
with
you,
that.
but like you're not moving. But he hasn't had a lightsaber for 10 years, and he's had to rely on the Force as his weapon. I'll tell you, even the idea of using some Force spoo, I thought was pretty cool, but it's just executed poorly.
I would have been okay with it if he actually shown he was effective at doing that. He should have knocked Darth Peroxide on her rear end without nearly as much trouble. He is far more experienced. He is far more skilled with the Force than her. He has proven himself more than once, and he trained under Kanan Jarrus.
Mhm.
This, he is a fully trained Jedi Knight, and she is an apprentice. He should have had it. He should have knocked her down hard.
Well,
and he got instead it was the other way around, and that does not work. On top of that, and I'll also point out one other thing that annoyed me, regarding Ezra, not necessarily because of him. It's like, okay, you're up on the Star Destroyer after you were flipped up. You know what the Star Destroyer has? Shuttles. It has TIE fighters. Come down, take a shuttle, bring it down, get Sabine and Ahsoka up there.
well, not only that, the thing I'm going to say about Ezra, there's a lot to say about Ezra, but
I really got annoyed by his happy-go-lucky, but
Yeah.
but maybe that's Sabine's fault because she never told him the stakes of anything.
Right,
there are
exactly.
two things. One is that Ezra. Well, first of all, there's two continuity problems I have. One is within the series, and one is outside the series. Ezra is fighting like a monk. Where did this come from? He never showed any level of martial arts skill. Ezra is a scrapper. He's a guy who then was trained as a Jedi, but he's even an unconventional Jedi because his lightsaber, his first lightsaber, was a combination of lightsaber and blaster.
Yeah.
All in one thing.
Which we never see Sabine use, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but he's never shown any training as a monk. And don't tell me that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Ewoks trained him as a monk. I'm sorry, it didn't happen. So that's one. So suddenly he's fighting, and you notice that the fighting style he's using is pure wushu. I mean, he's doing fire blocks and stuff, and what the hell is going on?
I'm air bending, everyone.
Yeah. So
Filoni used to work on Avatar, so probably brought it in there, but it just doesn't
there
work
we
on this
go.
character.
He did look like Aang a little bit with just with facial hair.
It just didn't make any sense. The second thing is continuity within the series. Episode 7, he had the most impotent force pushes I have ever seen in my entire life. And the only word you can use is impotent. That man couldn't push over a blade of grass. He was trying to push stormtroopers around, and they weren't even breathing hard. And then suddenly, fast forward, I mean, we're not even talking about Sabine's force push, which is bull. But suddenly, fast forward to episode 8, he's fighting stormtroopers, and he's tossing people around. Now, he's not tossing them super hard, but he's tossing them a hell of a lot harder than he was in episode 7. So I'm like, which is it? Is it impotent Ezra, or is it somewhat competent Ezra? He's not girl boss competent, but he's somewhat competent.
Right, because he had to ride behind Sabine.
Yeah.
All, or whatever. I can't.
Yeah, but I'm like, you can't do that, and you can't expect me not to notice that in episode 7 he can't push dick, and in episode 8 he's
throwing people around.
He's throwing people around like he should because he's a Jedi. So I'm like, pick a lane and stick with it, one or the other.
They clearly nerfed him because they wanted Sabine to look good, and that's the problem I have with it.
But it's like from episode to episode, his force levels are fluctuating.
That's precisely what I was saying about continuity in canon. Each episode is its own thing here. They say it's a connected story, but it's not, because the values change from show to show.
And you bring up one thing that I had involving continuity. Sabine was actually taught to combine her lightsaber skills with her Mando skills by Kanan during the trial of the Darksaber episode, and she completely forgot that she had it. So it's stuff like that. Even if the show expects you to rely on all the continuity from having seen the previous shows, but if you've seen the previous shows, you're looking at Ahsoka and thinking, "Wow, what are you doing, Filoni? You know this is wrong. You wrote half this stuff. Why is everything so haphazard?"
Don't worry, I do have to go soon, but when we get to the Jedalorian, I do have some things to say about her.
Okay, well, that's what we're going to move to right now. The only other character I will touch on just briefly is Huang the droid. I think he was the best character in the whole series because he was always right and always funny.
Well, since we're not going to
mostly right, he was wrong on Jason.
Since we're not going to touch on the Dark Jedi, it seems I just want to mention two things. One, let's all admit, Baylan is the most interesting character in the show. Mm-hmm. He's got some sort of motivation. He's got a plan. You want to know what's going on. Shin lost a big step in my estimation because Baylan cuts her loose as an apprentice and says, he recognized, we talked about the two paths that they were on, and he recognized this. He says, "Go, you're free to make your place in the new empire. You have that ambition. I have a different path." But what does she do? "Oh, I'm going to be a Mongol raider. Why didn't you go back to the ship?"
Right. See, if I'd written it, I would have had Ahsoka beat Baylan soundly, but he escapes to follow the voice of his quest. Yeah. And I would have had Sabine beat Shin soundly if you're going to give her a glow up like that, or at least beat it to her standstill. But the emotional payoff is what we needed, which is ridiculously missing.
And I think what Shin should have done was, go to Thrawn and say, I offer my sword to you. I'm going, I'll be your enforcer.
Totally,
Thrawn would not say no to that.
That's totally what I expected after Baylan cut her loose.
Ditto.
Why would she stay on the planet?
All I'm going to say with relation to the droids is that every one of George Lucas's properties and the world in general would have been better off if Phoebe Waller-Bridge and her influence never got near any Disney property.
Oh, God.
Especially Disney Indiana Jones, but that's another movie.
Yeah.
Or Millennium Falcon, or...
So we need to do a broadcast where we talk about, every failure that we reviewed. Okay, so finally, we saved the worst for last.
Oh, boy, here we go.
We have to talk about her because the entire show is actually about her.
The Jedalorian.
It started with the title character, but everything comes down to her. And if I hadn't had all the other reasons I've mentioned in this broadcast, Sabine alone is enough to make me done with Disney Star Wars. Just her alone. There's nothing interesting about her. She wasn't cast well. She didn't have an actual personality because Snark is not a personality. And we all knew this was coming. Everybody knew that she was going to go full Rey in the final episode. Everybody knew that she was going to be able to do whatever. But it's just because...
Well, the Force is female,
right. Just because you know something is coming doesn't mean it makes you less angry when it hits. And her doing all this stuff, because I thought it was going to be one thing, but she does multiple things over the course of this episode to where all of a sudden she goes from, I can't move my teacup, to holding doors open, to catching people in midair and giving them a force push up however many hundreds of feet that was, and being able to block blasters, because
Yes.
you need Jedi reflexes, you need Jedi speed. That's a very particular Jedi thing. And then being able to integrate both sets of skills, and just
Which is
all of a
what
sudden,
she should have been doing given the former continuity in history.
and so I was like, if I wasn't done already, I'm so done now until because can't stand her as a character, can't stand every time, she got run through, she went to the hospital, she was okay in like 2 hours. And just so the clues were there all along that she was actually the writer's favorite, that she had main character powers. But I'm like, then y'all got to push her into full Mary Sue mode. Now, she's not a Mary Sue in the sense of everybody that saw her fell in love with her. That's Lana Lang, because Lana Lang is the Mary Sueist of that of all time on Smallville. But Mary Sue, in terms of no training, no background, I can't do it, and skills that it takes other people years to master, it takes me seconds to master. I'm like, no, and no. And then the pièce de resistance, you were obsessed with getting to Ezra to the point where you sold out your allies. You sold out Team Ahsoka to go 13 trillion miles on the space wheels to find this man. And when you first see him, it's like some dude you met in a coffee house. And then when the final fight is going down, you literally abandon him to go back to fight with Ahsoka. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought this was all about Ezra for you. And I was like, so if I wasn't done,
Nothing
as
matters.
I saw that, I was done with 3 duns.
This is where the Nim rant is going to happen.
Okay, Nim, you go first.
Everything I hate about the modern version of Star Wars was encapsulated in Sabine's arc in this series. And I liked Sabine before this. I don't know how they did it, but they've made me hate this character. Hate it with a passion. And she's not a Mary Sue. We have to come up with a whole new term for her.
She's a girl boss. This is all textbook girl boss.
She's not even a girl boss.
She's a Mary boss.
How she has no talent.
Right.
At least with a girl boss or a Mary Sue, they're taking what little nugget of talent and exploding it. Even if it's just a little nugget. She has no force talent. That's established. They never retcon that. She has no ability to use the force and can. She is possessed, maybe? I don't know. It's freaking... And there are people out there who call themselves Star Wars fans who are championing this idea that anybody could be a Jedi. And I had this rant before, and listen to my voice. It's happening again. That's bullshit. You have to have talent in anything you do. Hard work counts for a hell of a lot. And if you have all the talent in the world and you don't put the work in, you'll never be successful.
Talent without training is nothing.
I agree with that all day long. You have to put the work in with talent. But at the end of the day, you still have to have some talent. It doesn't matter how much work I can put in. I was never going to be the starting point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers. It wasn't going to happen. I'm shit at basketball. I can't play. You have to have some talent. You have to. And with the Jedi, it's even more important because they are tapping into a force that exists. It's out there for everyone, but not everyone has the talent to be able to tap into it and channel it. That is central to Star Wars. That's why there are Jedi and Sith and Dark Force users and Jedi users and Jedi sensitive. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. Honey, pass me a cup of sugar. Here you go. Whoop, and move right on over.
That is absolutely right.
Wednesday Addams, stop trying to kill Pugsley with the friggin' butcher knife you just brought down. Whatever it is you're doing. But this is bullshit. And then we get into, then So that's right there. We have to come up with a new category to describe that. But then she takes whatever that bullshit is, and then turns it into Mary Sue territory, which is what DT was talking about. Suddenly, she's not just was trained by Kanan to be able to use the, like Steve pointed out, she was trained to use her Mando abilities and combine both, because he recognized that she has no Jedi ability. What she does have is Mandalorian skills. So she could bring that to her fighting stance. But suddenly, she's sitting there doing gung fu like it's Equilibrium, you know, or she's Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, while at the same time blasting lightsaber bolts and back with more skill than Ezra or Ahsoka. Bullshit. Bullshit flag. We need a new superhero called Bullshit Man who's going to fly in there and just point at them and go, that's bullshit.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then
he looks like Penn Teller.
Her master, quote unquote, tells her that you put the whole galaxy in danger. You disobeyed my rules. You came out here. You put people at risk. You really don't seem to give what, you know, I don't think you went far enough in condemning her with the thing with Ezra, because she shows up to see Ezra, and then for what? So she could kid and kibitz about him? What was their connection here? Why was she so concerned about finding him? Because it doesn't seem like she gives a damn about what the hell's going on with him. And then in the one moment of unexpected honesty here, where Ezra's like, I'm surprised you got taken on as the apprentice. He should have gone further and said, because you got no goddamn talent.
That was, I mean, it was implied.
He did. He rubbed it in her face in Rebels. You know, because he beat her a number of times.
Yeah.
You know, I'm better at you with a lightsaber. I have the training. I have the Force and you don't.
What the hell are we doing here? What in the hell? And this is where it really lost me, and where I said, I am done, where I got to the point where Jeff was, where I'm done with Star Wars. Because everything is off the table now. Anybody could be a Jedi. Anybody. Because everybody could use the Force. Which is
because Hu Young, who goes back to the old Republic, that droid has been training Jedi younglings since the old Republic. He's 1,000 years old or better. And he said in his wide experience that Sabine has the least talent he's ever seen.
Well, and here's the final point I'm going to make before I go, because literally I could talk for a long time about how much I hate this character now. A character I really liked and was looking forward to seeing in live action, and I thought the actress looked great. But Jedi fighting styles, these lightsaber techniques, have been mastered and perfected over thousands of years. For someone to become a master in a technique takes them decades of training, starting from when they're a youngling all the way up through to becoming a Jedi Knight, and even then they're not masters at a technique. Yeah. She invented a new goddamn, excuse my language, fighting style in half an episode and mastered it. Think about that. She invented a new Jedi-Lorian fighting style in half an episode.
How long did it take Bruce Lee to come up with Jeet Kune Do?
Yeah.
Decades.
But in half an episode. And in
he wasn't a girl.
About 6 hours, she came up with a new fighting style. She never exhibited this before. She never even tried it before. She suddenly whips out her blaster in one hand and her lightsaber in the other hand, and she's fighting two-handed, blocking bolts, firing, doing all of these other things all at once.
Nim, I'm gonna upset you anymore. I'm gonna upset you even more. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
When Ahsoka catches up with her, she asks her, "Have you been training?" They've only been apart for a couple of days. Yeah. She asked her, "Have you been training?" And I was like, "When? We haven't seen you do anything as far as training. You've been too busy finding Ezra." But apparently, she trained enough to create this new style.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Boss Sue. I'm going to call her a Boss Sue.
She's a Boss Sue.
She's a Boss Sue.
All right.
Or Sue Boss. A Sue Bass. So
kick his ass, see bass.
That sounds like a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
All right, Brazy, you're up next, and then we'll close with Steve, and then we'll.
Woo, doggy! Like I don't know if I can match that, but let's see what we got. I tell you, I really hate this. I really, really hate this because Sabine was so cool in Rebels, and I hate to put this on this actress because I'm sure she's probably fine in other things she's done. I have I have no experience with her in any other properties with this, but I've gotten to the point where I hate looking at her stupid face. As long as she's Sabine, I cannot stand her countenance at all. And I can't put this all on her because she's working with the material she's got. You've got to do what you got to do, and somebody's decided that snark is a personality, so that's what we're going to have. Now, somebody mentioned something about her having an arc. When she decides, like, okay, I'm not going to chase Ezra, I'm going to go with the Ahsoka. Is that my arc? Because she's been the same chick throughout the whole series. Throughout the whole series, what's she do? Always doing her own thing. Always doing her own thing. Always lying to people. Always keeping her secrets. She gets up with Ezra. It's like, oh man, I'm so glad to see you. This is really cool. I'm space Jesus and out here over. So it's good to have you back in my thing. Hey, what's going on with you? Well, that's complicated. Nothing much though, really. Not like I just fucked over the whole galaxy for you. Nothing like that. And that all gets hand waved away. Why did you give her the WandaVision? Why did you give the WandaVision? It's okay. Ezra's home, and we're supposed to be here. Really? Really? You're supposed to be here? Why are you supposed to be here? Oh, I know it's going to tie into Mortis because those of us who watched all the stuff know about the statues. We've seen the other worlds and all this other crap. But how is the audience supposed to follow that? How? Who are you writing this for? Who are you writing this for? You're not writing it for fans. You're not writing it for new people because they've got no clue. And you write the worst character I have seen in such a long time. It takes some effort to take characters that I like and make me not like them anymore. I will never watch this iteration of this character again or any of these others because they suck. Sabine, like Harley, Steve, don't learn nothing. She still didn't learn nothing because she gets the pat on the back. She gets the pat on the back. It's all good. It's all going to work out, girl, because the universe revolves around you and your stupid non-helmet wearing ass, because that's what you are. You are main character powers in a show that doesn't even bear your name. And everything just works out. It's like, oh, I've already said some other stuff. And it just, you know what? Fuck it. I'm done.
Bossy Sue. All right, Steve, we'll close with you.
Oh my God, how can I even
Somebody is going to
up
clip
on
me.
This level of anger and rantiness?
And
I was ready to rant for a while.
I'm gonna. I know this episode is gonna get me the heels versus babyface treatment. I'm gonna get all the ass flack.
Ass flack. But yeah,
I didn't mean for it to joke like that.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, Sabine's arc is a straight line. There is no rising action. There is no falling action. The story really should have been about Sabine and Ahsoka working out whatever their issues are and coming together, and both of them learning and growing from each other. There is no sign of any of this. There's no sign that Ahsoka has kind of learned, yeah, maybe I should stop for whatever reason, that I was acting boring and like like I've been taking too much Xanax. There's none of that. And Sabine doesn't learn from Ahsoka that maybe I can involve you and tell you what I'm doing and not keep secrets from people. Maybe I can learn, not to be insufferable and annoying and headstrong all the time. And maybe I can work with you. There's none of this whatsoever. All of it is basically Ahsoka don't learn nothing because she doesn't need to. She's the boring main hero. And Sabine doesn't need to learn nothing because she's Harley Quinn. She is the boss Sue. It's like nothing I do is wrong. Everything I do is justified. I don't have to learn nothing because I'm great. And it's like Sabine was never like this in Rebels. I went back and watched some of the older episodes of Rebels this week in preparation for the show. And I'm just looking like Sabine actually cared about people. She showed compassion. She admitted at times when she was wrong. She kept secrets from time to time, but eventually she admitted what they were. She volunteered what those secrets were. Even if some of it had to be coaxed a little bit by Kanan, but she was, but she eventually showed a certain amount of honesty, with that. And, she came to terms with the issues that, made her keep those secrets. There's none of that here. It's just basically, I'm right because I'm right. I'm perfect. And it's just like, there is no way in the world, there is no way in the world that these are the same character. I mean, I can't blame the actress. I actually think the actress is probably fine and probably would be fine if she was well written. But it's just that she's written to be like all of these girl bosses, and that is completely insufferable, completely aggravating. She's always has to be the one who's right about everything, and snarky and all of these other things. But she can never show that level of humanity that she showed in Rebels that made us like her. She was a bit headstrong in Rebels. She was a bit, kind of inclined to throw snark at Ezra and things like that. But, eventually she would admit, she cared about him and she would do things that demonstrated this. She has done none of this stuff. She took responsibility for nothing that she has done. She endangered the entire galaxy. She has subjected it to a galactic war because of what she did. And at no point does she admit, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I did the wrong thing. No, there's none of this. She doesn't go to Ahsoka and ask forgiveness. She doesn't go to Ahsoka and say, okay, did I, and ask, even asking the question, did I do the right thing? Because I don't feel like I did.
No, she does. She does say like she screwed up, but then Ahsoka just hand waves it off.
No, she just hands away with it.
To sum up the whole series is basically Sabine endangered the whole galaxy, got a participation trophy and a power up.
And I will also say, I have said through like the last few episodes, Sabine is the worst Jedi ever, and it's not just because she can't use the Force. And I keep pointing out, Jason would have been a far better choice, not just because he used the Force, but because he has the heart of a Jedi. He acts like his father. He cares about other people.
A screw up is where you put cheese on a sandwich and they ask for no cheese. That's a screw up. But Sabine, screw up is like what Ahsoka did in Clone Wars when we talked about the flashback. Where she overcommitted. She got all the troops killed because she overcommitted. And then what did she do? She learned from that. She got better. She was willing to admit that she was wrong.
I think it goes further than that. If I was writing this world and Sabine ever showed her face in the galaxy again, if I'm part of the New Republic, I'd bring her up on treason and execute her.
She should definitely be on charges. She should definitely be up on charges. And the thing is, she did it for the most selfish reasons.
Yeah,
that's the thing that really gets me. She did this for herself.
But there wasn't even a story payoff for those reasons. That's what makes it triple awful.
Mm-hmm.
But
she should certainly have been rejected by Ahsoka as her apprentice at that point. Like if there was any doubt. But no, we have to have everybody be a Jedi because this is the narrative that we want to push, and that really gets me too. Because and I will say there are things you can learn from the Jedi without having the Force. You can embrace the Jedi philosophy, and not be a Jedi. We've seen that Sabine can use a lightsaber kinda without being a Jedi. But this business of, okay, you can learn to use the Force without being a Jedi, and anybody can learn it because the power dwells in all living things. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Yeah, the Force dwells in all living things, but that doesn't give you the ability to feel the Force and use it. That is a separate talent. And you have to be born with that talent, or at least have a certain level of connection with the Force naturally to be able to do that. And we've seen this established more than once. Bloodline will be a large part of the reason why that happens. This is why Jason Syndulla can do it, because his father was Kanan. This is why Luke can do it, because his father was Darth Vader. All of these things. We've seen this over and over that these kinds of things happen. This is not something that you can just develop. I mean, but even if I threw that aside, the problem is that, they overdo it. It's like, I mean, it should have been a minor miracle for her to move the lightsaber. That should have been like, if that had been the only thing that she had done with the Force, I would have said, okay, narratively, that's a payoff. It's a stupid payoff, but it's a payoff that would have been earned because we saw that established. We saw her trying to do this. We saw this reinforced. But then she goes from that to pushing people around with the Force, to closing doors and with the Force, and all this other kinds of blaster bolts. And there is no way she should be able to do any of those things with the level of training that she's shown. She is on every level the worst Jedi I have ever seen, because she doesn't have the power, and yet they give it to her. She doesn't have the heart of a Jedi. She doesn't act like a Jedi. She acts like a Mando, and in some ways, she acts like a Sith. And the amazing thing is Hu Yang actually points this out. There was a scene early on in the last episode where Hu Yang is talking to Ezra, and she was saying, yeah, one of the reasons why Ahsoka kept her distance from her is because she thought Sabine could be dangerous. They proved her right. Ahsoka was right the first time with that. She is dangerous. We see that. She endangered the whole galaxy.
Remember a few episodes back where I said I'd be very impressed if they ended up making her a villain because of that. Because of the Mandalorian culture, Mandos are full of attachments. And that's the one thing the Jedi don't want you to be loaded with is attachments. And because
solidarity is the way. And it's incompatible with the Jedi code.
I'll just say this.
And on top of that, she acts like a Sith sometimes. Like a lot of her, the things that she does, her being aggressive, headstrong, the capacity for deception, all of these things that she has in her, these are things that are more like the Sith than like the Jedi. And, if anybody should have been training her, it should have been Balin. I mean, that would have been more interesting because you could have seen, I see the darkness in you.
I mean, there was such a cool
it can make you powerful. Join me.
There's even a look there that passes when Balin offers her the chance to go with them between him and Shin. And Shin's looking like, am I about to be replaced?
I'll just say that, like I said, I maintain that for this show to be taken even remotely seriously by anyone, she needs to go back and be confronted with the fact that the millions of people who will die, the billions of kids that won't have parents, the burned cities, everything else is all her fault.
Everyone Thrawn will kill will be on her head because she's the one who's responsible for that.
For crimes against the galaxy. And
she did all that for her not boyfriend.
Yeah.
On that note,
her not boyfriend.
Her not boyfriend, that's right. All I know, we need to wrap up. So you can see we could go another hour with this stuff, but this was so disappointing until it turned likable characters into hateable characters, and it turned some of the longest fans into we'll never watch this crap again. And that's what we talked about when we watched the trailer. We talked about this moment. We predicted the future. We said, what are we going to feel after the Ahsoka series is over? And we're all done. We're just done in every way you can be done because it made what was bad worse. And every time it had a chance to make a good turn, it did the worst thing possible, to the point where you would have to eject your brain from your cranium to enjoy the show in any way, shape, or form. All right, we got to go. I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much, Nims.
And all I'm going to say is I'll close with this. A Jedi must have the deepest commitment, the most serious mind. This one, a long time have I watched. All her life has she looked away to the future, to the horizon, never her mind on where she was, what she was doing.
Asterisk. Bossy Sue. Thank you so much, Bracy.
Guys, kind of apologize for this one going long out there. To you who have been watching, we've been trying to keep our format a little bit smaller, more concise, but most of us have been fans of this stuff for 40 years. 40 years. And this is the infection rising to the surface after seeing what's done. All of our favorite franchises have been completely gutted. And this has been the last holdout for a lot of us. And so that's why we've gone so long and why it's been so impassioned.
Because it's the end. Thank you so much, Steve.
Dave Filoni, your failure is now complete. you have doomed the rebellion. Yeah, I have to say, like, yeah, I have the same reaction in terms of lack of investment. So much so that I have to treat this series as separate from the series before them that I like, just so I can watch those. I have gone to Star Wars at this point. This was my last holdout, personally. It was. I had hoped that Filoni still had enough of the real Star Wars in it that I could still enjoy this. Because let's face it, nothing that's coming out after this or anything that I want to see. I mean, everything I've heard and seen about the Acolyte looks terrible. They don't even seem to understand like they're expressing basically the Sith code, and they're doing it unironically, as though this is what they think the Force should be. That automatically kind of makes me want to nope out of it. I have no excitement for it. I have zero excitement for Rey or anything they want to do with her. None whatsoever. And this is the stuff that's coming. You know, the only hope that there was that maybe like the setup for Heir to the Empire would be good. And maybe it might be better than this, but I don't have a whole lot of hope because it seems like Filoni, you know, even if he has some good ideas starting off, he's not executing them well for whatever reason. And I don't have a whole lot of faith that that's going to change with the film. It also seems like he's having problems like adjusting to live action in terms of filmmaking. That's not any good. So I'm kind of getting with Star Wars the way I am with the MCU, where I completely noped out of the MCU and I just don't care anymore because they've deviated so far from the source material in the MCU that I don't care. And it seems like they're doing the same thing with Star Wars, and I hate that. I want to like Star Wars. I wanted to like this show. I had hope for this show. There was enough material there for it to be good. This story should have been great, but there are too many execution failures. Too many failures of continuity and characterization, you know, too many things that don't work that should have worked. And it's a disappointment. And Dave Filoni's a better writer than this. I mean, I don't understand how he dropped the ball so badly, you know, and it just makes me fear for the future. You know, maybe there is another, but I doubt it.
We have to redub this Ahsoka / Filoni, The Last Hope. And they do it.
All right. Like Disney, you have cultivated the audience you deserve because we're gone. So see if you can manage on what you got left.
Don't forget to check out our other episodes on Comic Crusaders. We got some for everybody. We got up and coming artists. We got horror movies. We've got retro movies. We got some of everything. And me and this crew, as soon as we figure out what we're going to review now, we will see you on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Good night.
We're out.
Spoilers.